And here we go. Well, welcome tonight, those of you that will be listening to my recording. This is like being on the radio. I have people I have Ian here, and there may be some that will drop in, but I'm going to talk about some important issues tonight that will, I hope, make a big difference in your writing and also in your ability to get ready for your first essay coming up here in a week or so. Okay, so tonight's agenda is right on the screen here is to talk about run-on practice, which is a big issue I am seeing with my writing that I'm getting this quarter, and then sharing your position on animal rights, and then also a review of LACE, because I have I don't know, I think some of it is because I have some students that started the class late, but and then there's about half the class that are still working on how to do this correctly. And then help with your assignment for this week, okay? So I'm gonna jump into things here right away. And what I wanna do is, I wanna have us practice a little bit about run-ons. I'm gonna talk about it first real quick. You might have remembered me if you listened to my lecture. I taught you guys 3 ways to fix them, okay? And there are others besides these, but really what you want to do is, as a writer, you want to become more sophisticated and have sentences that are longer and more fluent, and so you can say multiple things in one sentence. You don't want all short sentences, as we talked about before, okay? The first and most common way to start lengthening your sentences but still obeying the rules is to use a comma and then a conjunction word. Okay, and those are words like and, like we talked about before. The word for is a conjunction word. The word so is a conjunction word. The word but is a conjunction word. These kinds of words, and actually it spells, if you had TS97, you probably had a textbook and you would probably recognize this thing here, fanboys, okay? Each one of these letters stands for one of the conjunctions that you could use, fanboys. For and not or nor but or wise yet, and so. All right, so that's method number 1. This is the one that we're going to work on a little bit tonight and review, but it's the one that it's the one that you want to use a lot to lengthen your sentences, but still avoid having a run-on sentence, okay? Now, sometimes in the middle here, you can I'll add this, another thing, because of this, you can say something like, because of A, B, and C, okay? And then a comma, and then you'll finish the sentence. So dot, 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 comma, and then you'll finish the sentence. And that's a way of extending an idea. It's kind of called a prepositional phrase, where you start the sentence with a preposition and then you have a comma and then you finish the sentence. But using the word like because will help you to be able to do that. Method number 3, which I've already talked to you guys before, is to use a semicolon. Now, if you remember in my little lecture about semicolons, use them like mustard or hot sauce on a tamale, or mustard on a sandwich. You don't want to cover it with it. You want just a little bit. And in your writing, if I'm writing a paragraph, I might use 1 semicolon in a paragraph. If I wrote a whole essay of 5 paragraphs, I might have 2 or 3 at the most, okay? Just like a little bit of mustard here. And then the 4th one is to just put a period, okay? Now, that's fine. It fixes the run-on to use a period. However, this is a intro to college essays class, and we're working on the ability to make our sentences longer and more fluent. One of the ways I've mentioned before that you can tell that a beginning writer is writing is the fact that they are, their sentences are all the same length and they're usually kind of short, okay? All right, let me just jump to something else. I'm gonna share something with you, and what I wanna do is I want to share something that I hopefully have on the screen here. Let's take a look here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so on the screen here, I've got my cursor kind of pointed to things here, and Ian, you could do this now, and anybody who listens. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take these first, for now, let's make it easy. or I shouldn't say easy, but let's just do two. You see sentence 1.1 and 1.2. Scientists knew about stromatolites, okay, and they have known about them for years, okay. Now, what I want you to do is I just want you to think in your mind, how would you join those two sentences into one sentence that is not a run-on, okay? If I just stuck, they have known about them for years afterwards, with no nothing to join the two, I've got a run-on sentence. Okay, how would you fix that? You could use a period, but let's say you wanted to say more. Okay, and in this case, you could say scientists knew about stromatolites, comma, and they have known about them for years. You'll notice I use a comma and the word and. Okay, um, so that's how I could take those two thoughts, make it a longer, more fluent sentence, not be a run-on. Okay. Now, what if the teacher said to you, and this is something if we had a face-to-face class, we'd do more work on as a warm-up as we got about halfway through the quarter. What if I said, I want you to join the first three sentences, 1.1, 2, and 3, into one sentence and have it not be a run-on? I want you to think about it for a couple of seconds here. How would you join all three of those into one sentence? And by the way, when you do that, you could take something out, but you got to have all the main ideas there. But you could cut some words out if you wanted. You could rearrange it if you wanted to. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. How would you join the first three into one and have it not be a run-on? I'll give you a hint again. You may take some words out, okay? All right, I'm going to give you an idea here. So here's probably what I would have done. Okay, I would have done something like this. Scientists knew about stromatolites, okay, comma, and so I got my conjunction word and, comma, and they have known about them for years by studying fossil formations. Okay, so what I did is I took kind of this first part right here, this third sentence out, and just reworded it a little bit, but I have all the main ideas. Scientists knew about stromatolites for years, or about stromatolites, comma, and they have known about them for years by studying fossil formations. Okay, so what I did is I took those first three and made them into one sentence. Okay. Now, I'll tell you something, believe it or not, there are writers that could take this whole first chunk of sentences here, 1 through 7, and make it all into one sentence using conjunctions and because of this, and this, scientists have been able to this and this and this as a result of this, and say the whole thing and have it be a long sentence, but not be a run-on sentence, okay? Look at number 2. Let's look at this, the 2s here. This was most unexpected. In fact, it was some years before scientists realized quite what they had found. How would you combine those two into one sentence and have it not be a run-on? Okay, in this case, what I would probably do is something like, I think I'm going to pause just a second here. Let me see if I can. I'm going to switch. Okay. I just have you in. Okay, I'm going to go back. Sorry, I thought I had a student in there. Oh, in chat, you gave me a comment. Thinking and semicolon. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you as a way of joining those sentences. Great. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to go back to this again. So let's see here. This is the most unexpected, in fact. So thinking this was most unexpected, thinking of the years. What you could do is, in this case also, is put a comma after unexpected, excuse me, and then put in fact, and then a comma, and then the rest of it, okay? Now, if you're wondering, well, where's your conjunction word? What you've created here is by putting a comma after unexpected, and then the phrase in fact, it's like an aside, or so it's like a pause in the middle of the sentence. So you could put a commas around that and then just include the rest of the sentence, okay? Um, let's just look at 3.1 and 2 here. Shark Bay is a tourist attraction today. At least it has as much of a tourist attraction as a place hundreds of miles from anywhere much. From anywhere much, okay? Odd sentence here. So is there a way, again, Shark Bay is a tourist attraction today. You could put a comma, or you could say or, comma, or at least it has as much a tourist attraction as a place hundreds of miles from anywhere, okay? Um, you know, or at least it has one, or and at least it has one. But you got to have that conjunction in there somehow. You got to do something that'll join those, a conjunction word and a comma, okay? But thinking about the fact that there are, look at number 4 here, look at the fours. Boardwalks have been built. They have been built out into the bay. So I would probably, if I was combining those thoughts, I would say boardwalks have been built out into the bay. I've just combined those two thoughts into one, okay? And I might put a comma, and visitors can stroll over the water and get a good look at the stromatolites, etc. Okay, so I'm using that comma conjunction kind of thing. Now, you're probably thinking, is it always comma and? No, sometimes if you're showing contrast, like, you know, this happened, thing A happened, but thing B is something to be aware of or worried about, you know, then I would say A happened, comma, but you should be concerned about B. So often when you're showing contrast, um, then you can use that conjunction word but, okay? But these are just a couple of examples of practice. And if you wanted to, you could pause this presentation here and you could practice with these a little bit, just to practice the idea of joining sentences together to make them longer, okay? But one of the issues that I am seeing, okay, a lot in the writing, and I just wanted to bring that up tonight, is I'm seeing a lot of this issue of run-ons, okay? I'm seeing a lot of sentences where the student is writing and then they start another sentence and there's no conjunction there or period or semicolon. But just be aware of that as I jump to the next concept. Now, it's your chance to, like, if we had a discussion here, I can let Ian do this if you'd like to. What I've got here is, ordinarily in a sit-down class, we'd have a class discussion a little bit. At this point, we've read 2 articles about treating animals more humanely. The first one we read, and then last week we read one by Jeremy Rifkin. The first one was about, you know, why we eat pigs but not octopus. And so in a sit-down class, we'd have a discussion. Where do you stand on this issue? Okay, and so the graphic I have in front of you is a very helpful tool whenever you're asked to write an argumentative essay. And argumentative means you're taking a stance, okay? You are taking a position. So in this case, what I often will do for my students is I'll draw a line, and on one side I'll put one position. In this case, 4 animals having, that should not be an apostrophe there, by the way, 4 animals having equal rights. And that would be a position. There are people that are absolutely for animal rights, and I've known people who are animal rights activists who go and demonstrate in downtown Seattle, protest against people wearing furs, all kinds of levels of being an animal rights activist. So a person that's really on that side of the issue might feel very strongly that we should not be harming animals at all, that they maybe even should have equal rights to humans, something akin to what the Germans are doing, where they give playtime with their pigs and attention and all kinds of things on that side, okay? There is actually something called an Animal Bill of Rights other countries have, and people are pushing for in this country as well, okay? So that would be that position on this issue. And then there are people all the way over to the right in the green who are against equal rights for animals. And what their position is more, look, humans are different than animals. They would say things like, humans are superior. We have been eating animals for thousands of years, and we've gotten along fine. that we are more intelligent. Some of the arguments that they would make on that side, you're going to read about, if you haven't already, this week in the rebuttal editorial that is written to the Jeremy Rifkin article that you read last week. Somebody wrote back to the Los Angeles Times in response to them. His name is Bob Stevens, and he wrote about his view on animal rights. Okay, and so he would be an example of somebody who's over here on the far right on the green, thinking, look, they're not as important as babies and children and humans, and if we spend all the resources on that, we're going to be hurting kids. Okay, so that would be that side. All right. And then there's also people who just say, look, I love meat. I barbecue all the time. I'm a big meat eater, and I'm not going to, stop eating animals just because somebody says I have to. Okay. Now, most people fall somewhere along this line, but I would say, having taught this module a few times, most people kind of move a little bit somewhere towards the middle a little bit. They're a little bit, maybe they're over here, they really strongly believe that there needs to be more animal rights. But they might, if they put themselves on the line, they'd say, I'm about right here. I don't think they're equal to humans, and I don't think we should do away, force everybody not to eat animals. But they would say things like, I think that we should be a lot more humane and kind and be sensitive to their fears and feelings and not torture them, and the list of all kinds of abuse that does occur with animals. They would talk about, but they would consider themselves not to be this far over, way over here, but they're somewhere around here. Okay. And then there are people that are, maybe they're right here on the issue. They're definitely a meat eater. They're definitely think that animals are not the same as humans. They definitely feel like, if you ask me to stop eating meat, they would say, then I'm going to feel like, I'm going to be very upset at you. And so they're over to the right a little bit. But on the other hand, they have some sensitivity to animal abuse. Okay. So, and then you could be right smack in the middle. Now, here's where this kind of a continuum that I have here, this line that I have, it can be really helpful. Because when you write an argumentative essay, which is coming, it'll be your first essay, you're going to argue for your side, and then you're going to also bring up what the other side believes and then rebut that. So it's pretty easy to do if you're over here. Okay. If I'm an animal rights activist and I have a for my side and I can argue all the reasons for my side, that's pretty easy to do. If I have to rebut the other side, because it's very clearly over here and I know what I disagree with. Vice versa, if you are a meat eater who loves your meat and you're not willing to give it up, then you know where you're at and you know what side you're against, okay? And you know what you object to over here. But what about the person that's somewhere around the middle here? So I'll just circle my middle thing here, all right? What if you land here, then what are you against, okay? So what I'm going to do for simplification is I'm going to circle this one right here. If I am a meat eater that's not going to give up my meat, but I think we should be a little bit more sensitive to treating animals more fairly in some ways, then that's my position. That's what I'm going to defend, that spot. But I might be against people who abuse animals and think that they're nothing and they should have no rights at all. That's going to be my against. That's the thing I'm going to rebut. That's the thing I'm going to say. There are some people who are way over here in this extreme, and here's what they believe, and here's why they believe it. Here's what they cite as evidence for it. And then you're going to rebut that. Okay. Likewise, if I'm, you could say, even if you were right here on this continuum right here, you're a little bit more towards the animal rights, then you have now the option of saying, but I'm not totally over here in this box that I'm now drawing, okay? I disagree with 100% animal rights having the same equal rights as humans and getting the same amount of money spent on them. And you could list the kinds of things that you think would be too far, okay? So this continuum, I've actually taught this to other teachers and shared it with them, and they found that is so helpful because now a student can like literally mark where they are on the line, and now they know what they're for and they know kind of what they're against by definition, okay? So we don't have time and opportunity for a class discussion, but I want you to know that this week, this is week 3, okay? 27th through like May 1st, we are writing still a one paragraph, and you can make it a two paragraph thing. I think it is a two paragraph thing. That's right. Paragraph assignment, talking about things you agree with and disagree with on two different articles. Okay. The one that you read last week, and now the rebuttal article to that by Bob Stevens. All right. So that leads me to the reason for my next slide here. Okay. Um, Here's where, as a student, it becomes really critical when you're writing an essay for college and you are asked to use multiple sources, okay, in this case, two different articles, in your writing. It becomes really important to distinguish who you're quoting and which article it is, because now it's two different authors and two different, titles, okay? And so we've already talked about this whole lace thing, that you need to have a lead in. So I'm just gonna, for those that it didn't quite sink in yet, okay, it spells this acrostic LACE. That's why if I keep writing this comment on your paragraph, I'm telling you, whoops, you forgot to do this, okay? Or a couple of you, I said, really nice job doing a lace. You lace it very beautifully. All right. You need to lead into it. You need to tell who said it and where. Here's an example. About midway through his article, the author writes, okay? What I've said is where, okay, about midway. And when I say the author, I now just told the two things I need to give, who and where, okay? Now, every time you give a quote or you paraphrase in your own words, which means you're not actually quoting within quotation marks, but you still got the information directly from a source, then you should do a lead in and cite it as well. And sometimes when you just got facts that you're not even paraphrasing, you're just giving a fact in the middle of your sentence that you got from a source, you should definitely cite it as well, okay? Most colleges across the country will expect you to use this style here that we've talked about before, this MLA. It stands for Modern Language Association style of citing things, okay? All right, you're gonna add the quote within quotation marks here. Don't forget the second one or the first one. I have a few students that forgot one or the other of those quotation marks. And then after you got to cite it, okay? So most of the time, you're going to give either the author's last name only, not the first and last, but just the last name, okay? And we'll get into, and actually some of you have started doing this, which is great, giving your sources at the end of your paper. Author's last name, comma, first name, title of the article, name of the newspaper, and the date. And you can say that it was online or print. So either you're going to give the author's last name or you're going to give the title of the article. And you'll notice I've got the title of the article within quotation marks, okay? And you'll notice that the first word, the first letter of each word is capitalized, except for not this one right here. Why? Because the small words like the, in the middle of a sentence, of, it, typically we don't capitalize in a title. And again, notice I capitalize the main words here, okay? And I did capitalize the first one because it's the first word of it. Always capitalize the first word of a title, okay? So that's a little bit about punctuating it. I'm going to show you another example on the next slide here. And then afterwards, you've got to explain it. You've got to have a couple of sentences where you're giving your own analysis about it. This is really most of an essay, most of your paragraph really should be your thoughts and your ideas about the quotes. So make sure that you're not just giving a list of quotes and strung together. They say that 80 to 90% of any essay should be a student's thoughts, not just somebody else's, okay? So I want to show you a couple of examples here. Number one, if I give the author's name in the lead-in, okay, then give the article afterwards. That's kind of a nice technique to follow. It's kind of vice versa. If I say, the author, Jeremy Rifkin says, or Jeremy Rifkin early in his article mentions that, and then you quoted him, then since I gave the author in the lead-in, in the citation, then I should give the article title. Cite the article title in quotation marks within parentheses, capitalized, okay? But if I give the article title first, then cite the author, okay? So if I said the article, A Change of Heart about Animals, argues that, and then you give a quote, okay, in quotation marks, okay. Then afterwards, cite the author's last name, okay. It's really kind of that easy. Um, is kind of a way of exchanging it, so you don't do it the same every time. You can go back and forth. And then a third thing to consider is sometimes, like my example here on the previous slide here, let me just see, right, look at the green one at the top. About midway through his article, the author writes, you'll notice I didn't actually give the author's last name or the title. I just mentioned the article and the author. So now I have, I have, excuse me, most of the time you would want to give the author's last name then, okay? If you don't give the author in the lead in, you usually always cite the author's last name. That's a general rule in MLA, okay? There are some times, however, when there is no author. You'll find an article online and it's from a good source, but they don't actually give the author. So then you just give the title of the article as your citation, okay? All right, so those are a couple of examples. I want to bring up a little bit of vocabulary here just for a minute, okay? Because it's good sometimes to mention these things in your as you're getting ready for your essay. What is a vegan? Okay, and a vegan is a person. They're kind of like if you go back to my chart here, all the way back here, they're a person way out on this side, and they very strongly believe that not only should you not eat any animals, but we should not even be partaking of anything that has any animal byproducts, okay? So you probably knew that we make um, all kinds of, everything from shampoo to hairspray to you name it. There are, sometimes animal byproducts on it, okay? A vegan won't even drink milk or have cheese or have anything like that because they are absolutely against anything where we're taking advantage of animals in any way. Whereas a normal vegetarian, by definition, if they're not a vegan, they may not eat any meats, but they might drink milk, for instance, because the cow didn't get killed in the process, okay, or have cheese on their vegetarian omelet or vegetarian um, lasagna. Okay. So that's an example of what a vegan is, okay? They are a person that is the strictest kind of vegetarian that you can be. All right, let me talk a little bit about your essay now. And so I'm gonna kind of stop the share here for a second and put myself back in the screen. Let me just do this, see if I can fix my, all right. So what I want to talk about is this week you're writing about two different articles. The nice thing is you've already written, in a sense, it's almost like you've kind of written a third of this already or more. Because last week you had to write about what you agreed with and what you disagreed with in the Jeremy Rifkin article called A Change of Heart About Animals, okay? And you use quotes in it and you got to articulate what you agreed and disagreed. This week now you're gonna write about, it's the same thing. You're writing about what you agree and disagree with, but now you're using multiple articles. You're using the Bob Stevens rebuttal to him. And as I mentioned, Bob Stevens, he strongly believes that he disagrees with Jeremy Rifkin's position. He thinks he's gone too far. He thinks children and humans are more important. And so he makes that argument. And he sent that into the Los Angeles Times newspaper, and thousands of people read it, and after having read Rifkin's article, okay? But now you're gonna write about kind of the things you agree with and disagree with in both articles, okay? And the reason why I'm doing this, just so you know, like why are we still doing paragraphs in an introduction to college essays? I'll just tell you the progression here. I am getting you ready to write a good college essay, but use multiple sources and use MLA style where you're citing things and leading into them correctly. And the college professors have found that, especially at this level, this is like a really important skill. If you can just get the students to be able to use sources and lace them and to quote them right and then analyze what you've said in your quote, even if it's just paragraphs, you're doing them a huge favor getting them ready for college writing. that's why I've kind of started with that. And then as we're building into that 5-paragraph essay that we'll be talking about next week, okay? So your assignment, it can be 2 paragraphs. I think that's what I ask you to do. It's a 2-paragraph assignment. I called it a mini essay. It's the things you agree with and the things you disagree with. But every time you use something you disagree with or agree with, you're going to make sure you lace it. Lead into it, add the quote, cite it, explain it. Now that you're going back and forth, or maybe all about one in one paragraph and all about the other, it's got to be really clear which article you're writing about. Okay? All right. I'm going to stop my recording and